Crimson Vow edition of the Coaching Chronicles, the series where you get a look inside the world of Magic the Gathering Limited Coaching. I'm Alex, joined as always by Nathan. Nathan, how's it going? New format, new Nathan maybe?
Not a new Nathan. If anything, probably a worse Nathan than normal.
No.
Yeah, I've struggled in this format. I mean, I've had a couple of good drafts, but a lot. Normally, I bounce between like 5-3, 6-3. Occasionally, somewhere get 7 wins, and then like floundering. I think I've floundered more in this. I think normally when we first get together at the beginning of the set, I'm usually like, I think I tell you, I'm like 55% win percentage or 60%. I think this time I'm actually at like 48.
Ooh, yeah.
Judging, but looking at the 17 lands data. So I have 1 trophy, and then everything else has been really hard.
Okay, so you're not alone. This is, I think, probably has been the roughest start for most people in across any format in the past 2 years that I've seen. Just like from people talking about their experiences with the format. Hell, I had a really tough time in the first few days as well. It took me 15 drafts before the set started to really click. So to you and to anybody else out there who's struggling in this format, you're not alone. This is a format that has a lot of weird stuff going on that isn't typical of how we've seen limited sets kind of play out in the last two years or so. So we're excited to talk about that today, and we'll try to get you calibrated with the format. As always, we have a draft log to go through. So let's go through that. Anything you want to preface this draft log with, or should we just jump in?
Anything I would say now would be like a spoiler for the end result.
Yeah.
So I think just for data purposes, I think this was my 5th draft of the format. And so you're not going to see me, you might see me reading a card or two here, or there might be some stuff in here that I've missed that I just didn't realize was good. And that's always true for me. But yeah, I would say nothing specific to call out other than that.
Okay, cool. Let's just jump in there. So pick one, pack one here. Let's see. We've got Howling Moon, which is kind of a interesting, not so great rare. We've got a Braid. We've got a few other things here. I'm curious what Nathan takes out of this pack. Looks like we take that said Howling Moon that is not so great. So thoughts on this pick here?
Beginning of the format, I really wanted to try the build around. I think we've talked about this before. I like to try rares at the beginning of the format.
Yeah.
It didn't look terrible if you could get a number of wolves. And I think by this point I had heard through the grapevine that wolves wasn't as bad as it was in the previous set. So I was like, all right, well, let's just try that and move on. That was Nathan. I guess I've done 11 drafts now. So that was Nathan like 5 drafts ago. I think if I had a chance to do it over again, what would I take? Oh, gosh. See, this is what I'm struggling with this set. Nothing really jumps out. I'm like, oh, I've got to get blank.
Yeah.
Maybe the Foreboding Statue or the Abrade, I think, is probably where I would land now.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
So I was going to say, the thing that I look at this pack and go, I need to get blank in this format is removal. Removal is just so important in this format. So let's set the stage a little bit. If you play any amount of this format, you'll know that it's pretty bomb heavy. That a lot of the games end up being dictated by the bombs, right? So one, that pushes you to want more removal to remove said bombs, if that's possible, and isn't some 4/4 6-mana 4/4 hexproof creature where removal doesn't matter. But also it's good to have cheap removal just to like interact early, to be able to like pressure your opponent so the bombs might not matter, because you can kill them before the bombs matter. The level 2 kind of, which gets a little bit into the more technical minutia of the format, is in some formats your cheap creatures do a really good job of tussling with the larger creatures, the 4 and the 5 mana creatures, right? Your 3s and 2s and 1s. Think of Midnight Hunt with like a Static Awakener. There's like a lot of cards that were just like, oh, this is good early and good late. Not so much in this format. I find that the cards get really the cheap cards, like Bloodpale Celebrant, all these 2-drops, Sharpshooter, Ancestor, all these cheap cards in this pack, for example, they get invalidated pretty quick as you go up the curve. So what that means is in formats where the cheap cards are better, you can go, hey, my cheap cards can just, double block on the expensive cards and it's fine. In this format, you need the removal spells to deal with the more expensive creatures. So it's not even just like removal spells for bombs, it's removal spells to actually like, deal with a 4-drop, a menacing 4-drop a lot of the time. So I am somebody who likes to prioritize synergy cards and like powerful build arounds above removal spells generally. Not the case here. I think removal spells are just so important. I'm aiming for like, 6 or 7 of them if I can in my deck. Another little big picture thing here is like Howling Moon, I was kind of talking it down a little bit a second ago. It's not the worst card in the world for sure, but I think that maybe we'll get into this as the draft goes on, but I think it's less important to focus on like big picture synergies in this format. Like, oh, I'm this deck. We've kind of moved back to like bread drafting in a way, or not bread drafting, but really just thinking about fundamentals of like a good curve, good removal, good, a good suite of creatures. And then the synergy is kind of secondary. Not to say that there isn't any, but it's a secondary thing. You don't want to be building your deck around like all these convoluted synergies because the synergies just aren't that strong essentially. So I would take a raid here. And then, I think my second pick would probably be like the Kindly Ancestor or something like that. Pretty weak pack overall. All right.
What about, can we go back real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Going to Kindly Ancestor. You would take that, I didn't mention this card, but I mean, I've played it before and it was good. The Cavalry. Training and flight, like giving something a jump, was pretty strong. Is that, you would take the Ancestor over the Cavalry? Yeah,
I found Cavalry to be pretty medium. So training, okay. I think, this is another big picture point. Training is just kind of a letdown.
Yeah.
I was doing a coaching session with somebody yesterday who they hadn't done much of the format at all, and they were kind of like looking for a big picture, like, oh, some things to look for. I'm like, oh, here's a really easy shortcut. Anything that says training on it, you can kind of disregard. It's not that they're all terrible, but they're just not important, essentially. Training is not necessarily an upside. It's just clunky to get going, and a lot of times you're like playing these understated creatures for not much gain. If you're on the draw, it's really awkward too. So I've not been impressed with the training stuff, and I don't think that kind of stuff is really a draw. Having training is not a draw for me wanting to take the card, essentially.
I was trying to wrap my head around just the comparing training to mentor, and training is much better in that one unit can train multiple things, which is awesome, but it takes longer to get going.
Yes.
Whereas Mentor was in Boros, and a lot of stuff had haste.
And
so like you would...
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, you would get your counters much faster.
Well, also, you also, with Mentor, you were guaranteed the thing that could put counters on something. Like, the big things had Mentor on them, right? Whereas, like, here, it's the small things that need a big thing to grow, right? Usually, it's like, you play your 3/3 with Mentor, cool, it grows my small things. You're not guaranteed that with the training things. And a lot of times, the training things just still stay small for a bit too long, essentially.
I would love to see a training, like obviously in some cubes, some training and mentor together. That would be
brilliant. Yeah, that'd be sweet. So moving into this pack here, we see some decent options. What does Nathan like out of this pack?
I took the removal. I took the Circle of Confinement.
Yeah.
That was probably number one for me. Number two, I think I like the Wolf Strike or the Lantern Bearer. I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of where I was looking.
Yeah, all of those cards are quite good. So the cards that stick out to me out of this pack: Circle, Lantern Bearer, Wolf Strike, Fierce Retribution. It's the removal spells and Lantern Bearer, which is the premium common. Also, Heron of Hope is quite good, but definitely lesser than these two white cards here. Yeah, I do like this. I think this is pretty close with Fierce Retribution as just like good white removal spell. But overall, I think that this is a fine pick here. You could also take Wolf Strike. That actually makes a lot of sense too, just to go with your green card. If this was a better green card, I would be like in for just taking Wolf Strike because I think these cards are comparable in power level. All these removal spells, it's good to stay in the same color. But no, I agree with the Circle here.
Got it.
Yeah.
So the first one was a disagree.
Yeah, the Halloween was a disagree. This one is an agree for me. Moving on to pack 3 here. What do we like out of this one?
I was really looking at the Into the Night. I think that's a really strong card. No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, oh, we got to have some talks, Nathan.
Honestly, like this goes back to what I was saying. Like every card in the format, once you get past the first couple of me, seems kind of mediocre.
Yep.
You can see me looking at the Wretched Throng there. I think I ended up landing on the Sigarda's Imprisonment to go with my other white removal.
Yeah.
Just not add a third color.
Yep, I totally agree. So let's just talk about the point you just brought up is actually pretty important. So this set is lacking a lot of generically powerful commons, compared to something like Midnight Hunt, which is just like had some busted commons, right? Like truly absurd commons. So in comparison, these commons look pretty weak. We're like, who cares? So the way I look at the commons is basically There are nothing aside from the removal spells. There's nothing I really want to be speculating on early because Throng and Epicure and all these commons are fine in their right places, but I don't want to be taking them early because they're just not powerful enough. But later on in the pack, pick 6, 7, 8, 9, you can kind of go, oh, cool. Ragged Recluse is actually pretty cool because I have a bunch of blood. Or Voldaren Epicure is cool because I picked up, some exploit creatures, or I have blood token synergies. So all of the commons are very contextual, right? I think the grading system in this set is it's hard to use because how good is Repository Scab in your deck on average? I don't know. It could be terrible, or it could be great because you have a lot of exploit fodder and a lot of good spells to get, right? How good is Scatter Thoughts in your deck? Well, it's never going to be terrible. It's just a draw spell. But, if you have a bunch of instants and you have a bunch of Disturb cards, it's going to be quite good. So you're right to say that, nothing in this pack is exciting, aside from the removal spell here. But I would be, later on in the pack, I go, okay, now let's see, I was saying you don't want to go into early packs being let's take this synergy card, build around it. The synergy comes later. The synergy comes later in the pack where I can go, okay, how can I best use these kind of not so great commons? Or does my deck use these not so great commons well, essentially?
Sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So, yeah, I like taking the imprisonment there, and we move on to, snap up this Diver's Cup. Thoughts about this pack?
I was looking at the Abrade and the Scob, and think that's it.
Yeah. I like the Diver's Cup. Diver's Cup's awesome. This card is just so good. Yeah. I mean, it takes a little bit of, deck building where you're you don't want to just throw this in a deck with nothing good to sack, but it wouldn't be the worst, right? It's definitely one of the exploit creatures that you don't mind throwing your 2-drop at the window just to, top their 5-drop or whatever. But you do want to maximize on it a little bit, pick up some Lantern Bearers, pick up some Disturb creatures, and it's essentially, a creature with a removal spell. So I like that over the Abrade. Another thing to note about this format, this is just something that's come to mind as we're talking here, is that I don't really have color preferences. This is one of the most balanced formats in a really long time, actually, where, I think red and black or, maybe green are actually quite good. They're definitely a bit ahead of the pack, but not to the extent that I'm going to hard bias away from any color or soft bias towards any color or anything like that. It's really just I just want to take the best card a lot of the time. And that's cool because you really get to employ, drafting the hard way. I was saying this set's kind of back to basics bread, kind of boomerish. And I think drafting the hard way actually really, really applies in this set because there's no archetype I really want to get into. It's more just about what are the good cards coming to me.
Yeah, going back to, I love that the format's like that. I just hate that some games just end with a bomb.
Yeah, that's the thing. So it was Sam Black was talking about this on his podcast this week, and he's like, if you're playing a lot of games in this format, a bomb heavy format is actually good for the format because it means, or bomb heavy with balanced commons, no commons that are insane Organ Horde or Diagraph Horde, is actually good for the format because you get to play a more diverse range of decks and play against a more diverse range of decks because people are going to be drafting decks based on their bombs, not based on Organ Hoarder, which you see every pack, and everybody who sees an Organ Hoarder is gonna be I'm gonna be blue and I'm gonna do the zombie kind of stuff, or Disturb stuff, where you saw this in Midnight Heaven where it's all right, I'm facing the zombie deck again. Oh, okay, I'm facing, the Disturb deck again. Here it's a little bit different where you're really piecing together these small synergies between the commons, and you see a lot less of the same decks. Now, it is not a great format if you care a lot about losing an individual game to a bomb, because that's going to happen a lot of the time. But you do get to play against a lot of different decks, which I do think is cool.
I didn't think about that. That makes sense. I would also think for somebody I think we've proven in this series that I can eventually get to the spot where I draft good decks. But I think we both agree that I struggle with gameplay. You would think that bombs would help me more than you, for example, because I would get to a spot where I can just drop a bomb or do something and win despite my inferior play skills.
So maybe in the abstract, I would say that might be true. But at the same time, you're still going to feel the bombs when your opponent plays them, right?
I hate it, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've lost to the Kraken 4 times already. At the end of the turn, they flash it in and just bounce everything. I'm well, this is miserable.
Yeah, the one that really gets me is the Dreadfast Demon, because you're there's no window. It's just they just play it, and they have 2 6/6s, and you're I have a removal spell in hand, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, no, it certainly is something, and I don't want to dismiss any complaints of a bomb heavy format, because that's super valid. I just want to say that there is some merit to, like Sam was talking about, there is some merit to it being, a bomb heavy format, not necessarily being an indictment on the format.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's fair.
All right, let's get back to our draft. What do we got going on here?
So I didn't mention in the last pack, but I've been seeing a lot of blue,
Yeah.
and obviously you see a lot of blue here. So I knew blue-white was supported in the format. I'm kind of moving towards that, so I was only looking at the blue cards here for the most part. I took the Cruel Witness. It seems like a pretty solid playable.
Yep. Yeah, but I think it's a fine, generically decent card. Everything else in this pack is kind of medium too. Like, I think it's important to make a distinction between the just like generically good commons like Crow Witness and the removal spells and stuff, and the stuff like Ragged Recluse and Repository Scab. That those are the kind of things I'm like, okay, could be good, but I probably want to pick up a little bit later. All right, moving on to this pack. Oh, interesting. What do you like in this one?
A lot of red here.
Yeah.
I've played the Falconwrath Celebrants before. I liked them.
Yep, good card.
The Reckless Impulse has been good for me.
Yep.
I think, I was looking still at blue-white at this point, and I took the Stitched Assistant, but I think you're going to say that's a disagree.
Yeah, that is a disagree for me. So basically, let's break this down. If you are to take the best card in the pack, which I think is reasonable right now because you don't really have that much direction, you just want to take the best card. I believe the best card in this pack is either Traveling Minister or Falconwrath Celebrants. Both those cards are really good. Like you said, Reckless Impulse is also quite good. But even if you're just going to take the best blue or white card, I think Traveling Minister is just better. Like, Minister is just... I don't know how much you played against or with this card, but...
I haven't.
Oh, it's a real beating. So, you know the feeling of playing against Lunarch Veteran in the last set, right? Where you're like, your opponent goes Lunarch Veteran turn 1 and they just gain 10 life. It's kind of similar, except this also, enables attacks and, helps peck in with your ground creatures or on your flyers. Also, helps enable life gain synergies on command. So yeah, I would really I would take the Minister here. Stitch Assistant is fine, but it's more of a synergy card where you want it after you have the good fodder and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe I need to revisit my evaluation of the Minister.
Yeah, Minister is great. That's a takeaway from that pack. And what do we like in this pack here?
This is part of the draft where I started to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really sure. I mean, Syncopate's pretty strong, but I think you need other instants to run that for the most part. Otherwise, you're just leaving stuff up and wasting your turn.
Yeah, you could run it, but it's you would like that ideally, yeah.
Yeah. I had experience with the Binding Geist. I didn't really like that before. So, and then I didn't really like the Skywarp Scab before either. I mean, 5 mana for a 2/5 that might eat some of your
your Serp creatures.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't seem like so. I was looking at the white cards there, and I think I ended up on Nurturing Presence.
Oh wow,
I wasn't sure.
I gotta say, Nathan, I feel ashamed of myself because I wasn't a believer that you would take the card that I wanted you to take, but you did.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Nurturing Presence. So if we're in the space of I'm blue-white here, right? Not to say we are, but that's somewhere we're pointed towards. Nurturing Presence is actually one of the best cards in that deck a lot of the time. So it's a really weird looking card. And actually, I believe last I checked, it's actually the most winning common in blue-white on 17 lands. Yeah. So weird card, and I've got a lot of questions about why is this card so good in blue-white? Basically, you could almost think of it, and this is kind of a weird way to think of it, but imagine you play a flyer on turn 1, Lantern Bearer, or just even if you put this on anything at any point in the game. It's almost like a 2-mana 2/2 haste flying creature, right? Because essentially, you put it on your Lantern Bearer, let's say, that's 1 point of, I guess it's 1 point of haste that turn, right? And then you get the flyer as well, the little token flyer. That boosts your Lantern Bearer, which gives a +1, so that's that 1 point of haste. And then if you play a creature for the rest of the game every turn, you're pecking in for 2 additional points, right? Also, this works well with stuff like Brine Comber, where you can make multiple creatures per turn. It just is a really good tool to put on one of your flyers, essentially. That's what you really want to do. Put it on a flyer and make it really large. And it's a bit of mitigation on your aura too, that you get the 1/1. So even if, it's but a lot of flying power divided amongst, multiple things. So you don't just get blown out when they cast a removal spell after you play this. So it's a weird card, and it takes a little bit of playing with to really understand oh, I see how this card works. But it is quite good, and I do like your pick here.
All right. I surprised you.
Yeah.
After a year, even after a year, I surprised
you. Exactly. All right. What do we like from this pack?
I just took the Circle of Safety to stick with blue-white.
I like that. Yep, that's nice. I do like a copy of Circle in most of my blue decks. Notably, Sell-Off Entomber is actually a pretty good card in blue-white just to, like, pitch your disturbed cards, and often actually you want to pitch the disturbed cards rather than cast them and then get them in the graveyard. Like, especially a lot of the uncommon ones, you actually prefer the backside to the front side. So being able to go like, all right, discard my disturbed card, then put the aura on, draw a card is actually pretty powerful. So I do like a copy of this in my disturbed decks, but I like taking the Cradle first.
I'm actually surprised with that. It seems like really terrible to pitch a creature.
Well, you pitch a creature, you're getting like a bit of value, right? Because you go pitch a creature, and then you draw a card, and you still get the aura in the graveyard, right?
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but I think I'd almost rather just have the creature and then have it die.
So the stuff like when you end up playing stuff like, the Catgeist and the Gutter Skulker, stuff like that. Those are cards that aren't actually that good on the battlefield, essentially, right? It's like a 1/1 or it's 4 mana 3/3, where it's just like, not so great here. So yeah, I found that it's better just to pitch it. Even stuff like Lantern Bearer, that is a good one to play. Sometimes it's better to just go, just ditch it and then get the flying aura on my big, ground creature or whatever.
Got it.
All right, let's go to this next pack here. What do you like in this pack?
So, I mean, as much as I was just questioning it, I think I did take the Entomber, not because I wanted to discard stuff, but because I was like, man, I just want a 2-drop body. So I took that over the Abrade.
Yeah, I think I would. So my thoughts here is you're not deep enough into white to, like, not want the Abrade yet. I would just speculate on Abrade, essentially. Abrade, again, just going back to the conversation, the removal is just so good, right? So I would take that here.
Another mistake.
Moving on to pack 10 here. We got a late Lantern Bearer. That's nice.
Yep, I took that one. I'm gonna put this down as irrelevant, though.
Well, I mean, there was like a removal. There's a few. There's a Wolf Strike in there.
There was a Wolf Strike. All right, I'll give myself the A then.
We have a Repository Scab. Yep, that's totally fine there. And we think about it for a minute. Maybe looking at that Into the Night that you were talking about before.
Yeah, I think I was just reading it, trying to understand what the heck it was. Have you ever seen that resolved?
No, not a single time. We take a Supernatural Rescue. Yeah, these last packs probably don't matter too much.
Yeah, I'll put them down as irrelevant.
Okay. So basically, we make it a pack 1 with a lot of good blue cards, right? It's a good place to be, deep in one color.
I like the white cards too because they're removal.
Yeah, the white cards are pretty good too.
And Sigarda.
One of the cool things about getting deep into one color in this format is it leaves you open in pack 2 to get to open or get past the bomb, right? It's like you get so much equity just being able to play one of those A-level bombs, one of the many A-level bombs in this format. And just like being deep into one color just lets you just pivot into something else easily if you want to. So we move to this pack and we see a Braincomber, a Wandering Mind. My thoughts are my guess is that you just slammed this Braincomber in your blue-white deck here.
I did.
Yeah.
I didn't. I thought about Winged Portent, but that seems just terrible.
Yeah, it's not so good. So I do like this. so I'm assuming from this point on, we're basically like we're blue-white, and we'll figure out. We'll I think as we're going through this draft, the rest of the draft here, where I would probably be a little bit open to being like blue something, just so I could get past the bomb or open a bomb. But Nathan here, in your seat here, we'll just go through this rest of the desk, this draft as if you're blue-white, because I assume that's what happens from this point on.
Yeah, I don't have the next level draft.
Yeah. Fair enough. I mean, it's a fine place to lock in, honestly. Like, you got a gold uncommon pack 2, totally fine. All right, moving on to this pack, and we see nothing too exciting. We've got the Drogskull Infantry versus Entomber versus Heron Blessed guys. Yeah, just take the good 2-drop. Totally.
Now, just a question for you. Let's imagine that we've taken those 2 Abrades and we probably would have had maybe one other red card instead of these white cards. Which do you think, like, just at face value right now, is more powerful? That red-blue deck or the red-white deck? Because here you would take probably the Ballista Watcher, I would assume.
Probably the red-blue deck, because, like, this is all very, like, see into the future, kind of looking in hindsight. But we get 2 Abrades, we get a Wandering Mind, which is really quite good in this pack here. And then we get to pick up a Ballista Watcher, which is also really, really good. This is, like, a top uncommon. So, yeah, I look, again, not that it matters too much just in hindsight, but yeah, I would like the world where we are in red-blue, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at the 17 lands data. I don't know which color pair, has done better.
I don't think it matters all that much in this format, because it's much more about your individual synergies between cards, not so much like this archetype is doing so well because the synergy. It's very much minor synergies in this format. So I wouldn't worry too much. I believe red-black and red-green are the best performing, but All the other ones are very close. So, yeah, like I said,
because they have
it's
the
not...
most A-level bombs.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Well, I think they have the best common removal in common creatures, actually. So
that's fair too,
that makes sense to me. We take a Fierce Retribution. I like that. Yep, just lock in more removal. Again, I like the Heron too, but... maybe we just read. I was like, are we going to take something else? No, we take that.
No, I was just reading it.
Yeah.
Going back to Child of the Pack, this is, beginning of the format, just questions for you.
For sure.
It seems really cool, but if you spend your turn to activate the wolf or make the wolf, it flips to knight, and then you can't keep activating. You did get like a, whatever it is, a 5/5 and a 3/3 out of it or something?
I would say basically, like, it's up to you to have... It is a little bit awkward sometimes where you're like, yeah, like, I would like to keep making 2/2s, but you're often pretty happy just having a 5/5 that pumps the rest of your team. So,
okay.
This is a really good card.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have not played with or against it, so...
And like you were saying at the top of this, the werewolves are a lot better in this set. Another shortcut I think you can use is the werewolves, by and large, are just good. Like, there's a few of them that are like, I don't care for that. But even something like Hookhand Mariner is just a good card, honestly. So, very different world we live in than last time in my Night Hunt. All right, this pack, we take a look at Border Window.
With this deck, I played against one Border Window.
Yeah.
And, like, it just shut me down. I couldn't do anything.
Okay, so this is a really good time to have this conversation about Border Window. I believe Border Window is not a card you should play in Best of One. Essentially just because it's really powerful, specifically against your deck. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, it killed my deck.
These small flyers, you're like, I can't beat that. But I think it's just really, really bad against like the green decks or even the red decks, right? Like, against those decks is pretty abhorrent. Against some decks, yeah, it completely shuts them down, but unless you have like a way to discard this, like maybe you have blood to discard it for value and be like, okay, this is situational, I can discard it and not feel too bad about including this card in my deck. I think it's just too big of a liability in some matchups. It's an insane sideboard card. In Best of 3, yeah, I think this is a perfectly reasonable card. I just think in Best of 1, it's not worth the risk, essentially. Even though you can have matchups where it's insane in. So I would take this Traveling Minister here myself. Again, I think this card is really, really good. And you do too.
Because I did take it. Yeah,
me, Nathan. Jeez.
But I was actually curious about the boarding window. Totally. I wanted to hear Alex's thoughts on it.
We got double value. We got to talk about the card, and you took the right card. So, all right. Oh, and so here we're just like, just take white cards, essentially, right?
I think so. I mean, the Allenbach Escort doesn't seem so great for me without any +1/+1 counters.
Yeah, not so great. I agree. Just to have a little bit of thinking back about like the world that could have been. Now we can just take the Flame Blast Bolts, right? And I think we'd have a pretty good time. Not to say that this maybe isn't going to be like maybe your blue-white deck's just good enough anyways because your removal suite's pretty good here too. But I would like to live in the world where we don't have to take this Unholy Officiant. We can just take Flame Blast Bolt and then be blue-white or blue-red and be like, okay, cool, we get to have the best of both worlds and then figure it out later based on what cards we get past later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense.
We take Officiant though. We move on.
I just felt like I had found my lane, which was nice because look at this pack.
Yeah, what do we like out of this pack?
I took the Distracting Geist. It's a spirit. It comes back. It plays that well with the Brine Comber and all of that. B, I don't think any of their cards are super stellar for blue-white.
So
maybe another Cruel Witness.
I would probably take the second Cruel Witness here. I think the Distracting Geist is much more of a like a red-white card or a white-green card maybe, where you're like getting your ground creatures in. When you're putting this on a flyer or you're using this, in a flying deck, it doesn't do that much really because like your flying creatures already are evasive essentially. Right, so maybe they have a flyer of their own you can tap down, but I think it's just a little bit too low impact here, and I would take the Cruel Witness myself.
Is this a mistake or a disagree?
I think it's mostly a mistake because I haven't been too impressed with this card in general, and I think specifically in your deck it's not so great.
Perfect.
All right, this pack, you gotta love a Jund pack for your blue-white deck here.
Yeah, I took the Blood Fountain.
Yeah, we'll just call this one irrelevant, I think. Yeah. Here, do we take another Cruel Witness? Let's see, you might just take the 2-drop.
I took the 2-drop. I felt like I was a little light in that, so I took the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, I think you're actually okay on cheap creatures. That I think you can just take the Cruel Witness, just a better card. Like, you're not so short on 2-drops that I feel desperation you need to take a really bad 2-drop. So I would just take the Witness myself.
So just, I guess, I need to look at the 17 lands data. Vampire Slayer is a bad 2-drop.
Yeah, it just doesn't do enough of the time.
Okay.
Moving on here. We see, the Wandering Mind comes back, my heart. Yeah, we take a Nebulous Beguiler, which actually this is a good place to talk about this card. I don't know if you ended up running it, but this is a card that looks very strange, and it is very strange. A big big old butt 5-mana tapper. But I've actually found it to be pretty decent. Just like,
is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it actually comes up the ground, and then it taps down. It's essentially like a removal spell the turn it comes down, and then you can tap whatever on future turns. Like, so in your like blue-white flyer deck, it's not bad just to like maybe even tap down their 1 flyer that's blocking your stuff, or just tap down their big 6/6 or whatever. So I found it to be fine. It's not like a card I'm dying to play or anything, but it's a card I can consider playing, and it's a free pick up at pack 9 here, or pick 9 here.
Yeah.
So
it didn't make the deck.
yeah, fair enough. I mean, I would assume it doesn't because your deck's just pretty good anyway. So all right, rounding out the pack, we see, oh my
the rest
gosh,
of everything is
all these red cards still. Jeez.
I know. A Ballista came back.
Yeah.
So what were people drafting in this deck? I have no idea. In this draft, I have no idea.
I guess green?
Green,
Yeah.
black?
Green and black. Black tends to be a pretty popular color, just, by merit of there being a lot of removal. Okay, we get to this pack. I assume we take the Brian Comer here.
I took the Brian Comer.
Our good friend Brian. Whispering Wizard's also pretty good. It plays well with the disturb stuff, right? Because your enchantments are non-creatures too. So
yeah, I think I misread that as instant or sorcery, and I'm like, well, I don't have many of those.
yeah, totally. Yeah.
So I think that was a mistake on my part. But I do think the Brian Comer is better than that.
Yes, I do too.
You?
Yeah, Brian Comer is quite good in these decks. So I like that. We take that. We move on to this pack here. Thoughts on this one?
I had gotten mowed down earlier in the format by the Storm Chaser Drake.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of enchantments, so I went with that.
No, card's great. Yeah. It's just like the perfect vessel to put your disturb stuff on, right? Just like cheap flyer, even if you don't put any auras on it, fine. It just beats down as a 2-1 flyer.
2-mana 2-1 flyer is just fine.
Totally agree with that pick. It's awesome. And then when you get to go off with the auras with Brian, like the nutty Brian Comer Drake turns are just like really, really good. So big agree on that. Get to this pack. Nothing much exciting. Thoughts?
I took the Witness the Future, but didn't end up running it.
Yeah, I actually think this card's
landed.
pretty okay. Like, so some games can actually go to a grind in this format, where I've gone to decking a lot of the time in this format. And this 4 cards might be the difference maker, but it's not even about that. It's about just like shuffling your action cards after you've used them and they've maybe got removed, so you can draw more action in the future. And like the opportunity cost of putting this card in your deck isn't that high, because just like 3 mana, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, put one in your hand, isn't that bad of a card. You wouldn't just run that, but the added the addition of the shuffle some stuff back in does actually make it worth the card a lot of the time. So out of this pack, I definitely like it, and I wouldn't be surprised if I actually ended up running it in this deck.
Okay, I don't know if it ended up making my final build, but looking at the next pick already, I think I would have done something different now in retrospect.
What do we take here? We take the...
I took the Wretched Throng.
Oh, yeah, I think it's a little bit too late for the Wretched Throng here. So, yeah, I would just take the Scattered Thoughts as just like a decent card draw spell. Even the Heron Blessed Geist would be decent.
Over the Geist Light Snare?
Yeah, Geist Light Snare's fine, but nothing special, I guess I would say.
So just to do a little deeper dive, I have a lot of spirits. Is it... So you're basically saying even at whatever it is, 2 mana?
Yeah, it's 3 mana or 2 mana if you have the spirit, yeah.
So 2 mana, I guess, is just Mana Leak at that point, right?
A lot of the value of Mana Leak is that you can cast it on 2 for as a 2 mana counter spell, right? And then
later in the game, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. All right, we move on to the rest of this pack here. And I imagine it winds down from this point. We take a Drog Skull Infantry. Yep, I like that. Don't like Geist is fine. A fine card too, but I think this is just a better 2-drop. We move on to... This pack doesn't have that much. We take
the rescue.
The rescue, the supernatural rescue. That's fine. No, I don't think we're going to be playing any of these cards. Pick 7 here offers us an option. So what do we like in this pack here?
I took the Stitched Assistant, but if I had a chance to do it over again, I think I would have landed on the Heron.
I think I would still just take Nurturing Presence here, honestly.
You still would here,
yeah.
Okay.
So if you had multiple ministers, I would take Heron, because that's just a really nice combo, gaining 2 a turn, right? But I think that with Nurturing Presence, like, they actually play pretty well together, multiple Nurturing Presence, because, like, you put it on your first flyer, you get another flyer, they kill that one, you put it on your next flyer, you gotta get the loop going, right? And I think that, like, you have enough value stuff going on that you don't really need the Stitch Assistant, essentially. So, yeah, I think I would just take Nurturing Presence there.
I think also, you touched on that there's not as much removal in this format, so I think in general I was trying to stay away from enchantments or auras specifically, to try not to get blown out as much.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe I should be less fearful of that.
Yeah, especially because if you put it on a cheap flyer, like you often get in for a hit and you leave the 1/1 around, so it's not that big of a deal. It's not like you're losing out on a lot if they do remove it. You really just have that one window where you need to land it. If they blow it out in response, like they go like abrade your thing, you're a bit sad there. But otherwise it's I feel pretty good about just landing it, getting in a hit, and then getting the spirit.
Got it.
And then the last parts of this pack don't seem like they matter too much. You take some marginal cards. You do get the Scattered Thoughts back, which is kind of nice. We may play that. And here's our final build. We end up here. So thoughts on the draft overall. And it looks like you might have left the Minister in the sideboard. That's something that I do not approve of. That card is so good.
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, let me look at the final build if it made it.
For
It
sure.
didn't. I put the. I think what you're looking at is pretty much the final build, and maybe obviously there's one more cut. Well, there it was. Whatever I did.
Yeah. So I agree with this build for the most part. You put in the Selhoffen Tumor, or you don't put in the Selhoffen Tumor. You cut the
I took it out.
Yeah, the Wretched Strong. So I would just play Minister over like one of the Wanderlight Spirits, probably. Just just kind of a medium card, and this is a much better card.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
But yeah, thoughts on this draft, or talks on the format overall after we've talked a little bit.
You and I were talking before the recording. This is the only deck that I've done that has no bombs that went well. I think this went 6-3.
Yeah.
Every other one had at least one of those A or S tier level rares that got helped me win games that I probably shouldn't have, or close games out earlier. And I think I think I have a good idea of what this deck kind of wants to do. I think I need to learn what the other decks want to do.
Yeah, and I think it's like like I was kind of saying before, I don't even know if it's so much about like what the decks are trying to do. It's kind of like finding the small synergies between the commons to like be like, oh cool, like I have a bunch of Lantern Bearers, so that makes me want Stitch Assistance and Diver Scobs a little bit more, right? Like these like micro synergies, and those really drive decks. Like for example, I had a blue-red deck yesterday. And you'd think, oh, blue-red wants to be, casting non-creature spells. That's his thing. But it was really just an exploit deck, because all the blue commons led towards exploiting. I had like a bunch of Lantern Bearers, a bunch of Stitched Assistants, a bunch of the tap something, draw cards that work with the zombies. So, I find that often you'll be doing the thing that the deck wants, the Aura's thing or the Disturb thing, whatever it is. But the best drafts, or the best way to optimize your drafts, is often to just like look at what your commons are doing and optimize on those little micro synergies. Because the powerful cards like Scob, like those bombs you were talking about, they're just gonna do their thing generally, right? Like they're gonna be good cards no matter what. So you really want it. The way to optimize is ask what your commons want and pick things accordingly. Yeah.
I think my final parting thoughts on this deck, just to talk about it specifically, is I didn't really see the power of Brinecomber. But I was like, I'm gonna give it a try. It looks, it's got to be a 1/1 for a reason.
Yeah.
and this deck made so many spirits and won a lot of games off of that. I think my actual MVP though was Cradle of Safety.
Oh,
because there's so much, we didn't talk too much about that, but that like just voided so much removal on stuff that I had a bunch of enchantments on, and a lot of times it was on a Brinecomber itself. So it's like, hey, cancel your removal spell, and I also get a +1/+1 on it, and I get a spirit. It was just really powerful.
And plus, since aside from like a Braid and Flame Blast Bolt, the removal in this format's kind of clunky-ish. So they're spending like 4 or 5 mana, so 6 Heaven Forbid, and you get to go 2 mana, nope.
Yeah,
so,
it was great. I was super surprised.
It can be a big blowout. All right, well, this was a good first draft to go over. I think we covered a lot of cool stuff about the format. I think hopefully those at home that are struggling with this format gained a little bit of insight on how to navigate your drafts a little bit better. And we'll see you next time for another draft.
Hopefully I'll be above 48%.
Yeah, we can hope. All right. See you, Nathan, and catch you around, everybody.
Thanks, guys.